15 years ago, my ex-husband cheated on me with his childhood friend and even had a child with her, leading to our divorce. After the divorce, I suffered harassment from his affair partner and was eventually forced to quit my job. When I was at my lowest, my current husband rescued me, and we've built a happy family and live a peaceful life. But the happiness was short-lived. I unexpectedly ran into my ex-husband who abandoned me 15 years ago.
You're still single, aren't you? No one would marry a woman who can't have kids. You still can't say anything but nasty comments, can you? Unlike someone, my son is adorable like his mother.
Looking down on me with a smug smile, I retorted, "Oh, really? He's very cute indeed. Oh, I should introduce my kids to you too." As I introduced my son, my ex-husband's smile faded. And he began to tremble. "My name is Emily Johnson. I'm 38 years old this year. I live with my 13-year-old son Kyle, my 11-year-old daughter Lily, and my husband of the same age, Mike." Kyle, a middle school freshman, is right in the middle of his rebellious phase. He's been quite mouthy lately, but when he really doesn't listen, Mike steps in and sets him straight. Lily, my daughter, loves makeup and clothes and is quite the fashionista. Being the youngest, she's very good at getting her way. My son Kyle, who adores his sister Lily, quickly panics and apologizes whenever she tells him, "If you're not nice to mom, I'll start disliking you." He hurriedly says, Sorry. Look, I'll get along with mom, okay?" He's honest and always livens up the atmosphere. Though noisy, we live happily. But actually, I'm a divorcee and this is my second marriage. I divorced due to my ex-husband's despicable betrayal. It was 15 years ago when I was in a senior-junior relationship with my ex-husband, John, in college. We were blessed and had a smooth-sailing relationship as we had many mutual friends. Soon after getting married, we both wanted children and would talk about how nice it would be to have them, even dreaming about dressing them up in matching outfits. However, reality wasn't so kind, and a year passed without us having a child. Each month, when my period came, it strained our relationship, which neither of us liked, so we had many discussions and even underwent expensive fertility treatments. But when told there was nothing wrong, our marital relationship didn't improve. Initially, John was supportive and cooperative, but as time passed without a child, his attitude towards me began to change. He'd throw sarcastic comments like, when will I ever become a father?" As if it was all my fault we didn't have kids. He stopped helping with household chores altogether, leaving me to do all the cooking, washing dishes, laundry, and cleaning. When I asked, "Why have you suddenly stopped helping with the chores?" "You used to help," he said. "Since you're infertile, if you don't at least do the housework, you're not fulfilling your role as a woman. What's the point of our marriage then?" His words became increasingly thorny over time.
My sister and her husband are already expecting their second child. Isn't that great? They're on their second, and we don't even have our first. Right?
He would glare at me with harsh eyes, mocking and despising me.
If you had a normal body, I would have been a father long ago. How can you say I'm not normal when we don't even know the cause yet?
But John retorted, "Infertility is always the woman's fault. Don't you even know that? If I had known you were infertile, I would never have married you. Show some remorse." His words pierced my heart. I also started receiving calls from my in-laws saying, "We want to see our grandchild soon." At first, I brushed it off, saying, "It's only been a year. These things take time," but maybe that was a mistake because my mother-in-law's attitude became harsher. She'd say, "You're useless if you can't have children." My daughter had one right away. "You're the only defective one." I felt pressured every day. One day, my close friend Sarah invited me out for drinks. John had been saying he was busy with work and coming home late, so I thought a break would be good and accepted the invitation. Then Sarah revealed a shocking truth.
"I've wanted to see you for a long time, Emily. There's something I need to tell you. I've missed you too. So, what did you want to talk about?" "Emily, do you remember Jessica?"
Jessica was John's childhood friend. They lived near each other as kids and their parents were close. Jessica and I went to the same university, and now she works at my company. She's the president's daughter and got her job through connections. Jessica and I weren't particularly close in college, as we were in different clubs and departments, and we barely interacted at work. John once introduced me to her, saying, "She's my girlfriend, so be nice to her." But she glared at me, perhaps not wanting to lose her childhood friend, so I thought she disliked me and kept my distance. Tall and beautiful, she was popular enough to be in beauty pageants in college and was somewhat of a celebrity in the company, being the president's beautiful daughter.
Jessica? Oh, John's childhood friend? Yeah, I know her. She's beautiful. We're at the same company, but we don't interact much. What about her? Well, it's hard to say, but I think Emily, your husband John, and Jessica are having an affair. What?
I was shocked by Sarah's warning, feeling like I'd been struck by lightning.
I saw them the other day. They were walking hand in hand, not like just friends. That can't be. You should check it out. And call me if anything happens, okay?
Thanks for telling me. I had a feeling that John was cheating. His attitude towards me was terrible, and he always came home late, claiming to be working overtime. On weekends, he'd say he was entertaining clients and wouldn't be home. I had a vague idea, but I pretended not to notice. That day, after parting ways with Sarah, I headed straight to a private investigator. The reason, of course, was to gather evidence of my husband's infidelity. It didn't take more than a week to gather evidence, but I myself wasn't ready to decide on divorce right away. No matter how terrible a husband he was the person I once vowed to spend my life with. I couldn't decide right away. A few days later, I returned home to find John, who usually came home late, sitting at the dining table.
Oh, you're home. Yeah. I thought you'd be late today, as usual.
I tried to sound sarcastic on purpose.
Yeah, sorry about that. I need to talk to you.
Having heard about the affair from Sarah, I had a bad feeling.
I want a divorce. What?
So, that's how it is. I realized that John wasn't just fooling around with Jessica, but that he was serious.
Jessica's pregnant. So, I'm gonna marry her. Jessica. Your childhood friend? You said she was just a friend. And now she's pregnant? You were having an affair? Don't call it an affair. Makes me sound like a scumbag. Can't be helped, right? Jessica can actually get pregnant, and she's beautiful. There's no reason for me to choose you over her.
I was shocked by John's brazen attitude. He didn't think he was in the wrong at all. I was so shocked that I couldn't find the words to speak. Seeing me silent, John scoffed and said, "Even my mom kept nagging me to divorce you. She always liked Jessica more. She's beautiful, kind, and can have kids. My mom will be happy with this." In the end, my mother-in-law and husband had always preferred Jessica. I was so sad that tears started to flow.
Well, I've packed my things and I need to leave for the sake of the child that's about to be born.
Saying that, John left the house. I didn't have the energy to stop him. Later, I was unilaterally sent divorce papers. There was a note attached, written by a woman. "Please divorce my husband quickly." The contradictory words made question marks pop up over my head. I wanted to retort, "You're the one who stole my husband." Seeing those words, I finally came to my senses. Why am I the one being blamed? I couldn't just silently go through with the divorce. With that thought, I took the evidence I had gathered from the private investigator and filed for divorce mediation. A few days after filing, I received a call from an unknown number. Wondering who it could be, I answered the phone to hear a woman's voice screaming, "What do you think you're doing? Why are you suing us?" It was Jessica, the affair partner.
Well, it's obvious, isn't it? I know all about your infidelity. It's only natural for me to ask for alimony. Alimony? I have a baby in my belly. You're really gonna demand money at a time when we'll need it most? Who's the real monster here? You sleep with a married man and have the nerve to say that to me. It's your fault for being infertile, you terrible woman.
Her high-pitched screaming hurt my ears.
Anyway, I intend to settle this divorce, including alimony, in court. Let's discuss this further in the proper setting.
With that, I hung up the phone. Later, thanks to the evidence I had, the mediation recognized John and Jessica's relationship as adultery. John, unhappy with this, tried to blame my infertility, but it was dismissed as unreasonable since no test results had confirmed me as the cause within just a year of marriage. I received $40,000 in alimony from John and $20,000 from Jessica, both paid in one lump sum. I didn't want a prolonged, messy payment schedule and a lingering connection to them. This is how our divorce was finalized. However, my suffering didn't end there. Since John, Jessica, and I all attended the same university, the affair scandal became a topic of gossip among many friends. According to a close friend, the rumor was that I had hidden my infertility and tricked John into marriage. Some people even sympathized with John and Jessica.
How awful!
Jessica and I worked at the same company, and she spread unfounded rumors there too. Everyone sided with Jessica, who's a beauty and the boss's daughter. She tearfully played the victim, saying, "Emily is such a terrible person. Taking money from us for alimony when we're about to have a child, even though she hid her infertility." At first, I tried to ignore it, but being the boss's daughter, Jessica got preferential treatment. My boss would scold me, "Don't be mean to Jessica," and despite my hard work, I was progressively left out of major projects. Eventually, I was mentally cornered and chose to resign. While I was looking for a new job, I received a headhunting offer from another company. They said, "We need someone as diligent and talented as you." At my new job, I was amazed at how freely I could work. My new boss paid close attention to each employee. There was none of that favoritism or nepotism like at my previous company. I found myself drawn to this wonderful boss. That's how I met my current husband, Mike. When I was at my lowest after a terrible split from my ex-husband, he kindly supported me. After several dinners together, we started talking not just about work, but about our personal lives too, and our relationship developed. Things went well between us, and thankfully, Mike proposed to me. However, having been rejected by my ex-husband for infertility, I had many fears about marriage and confessed to Mike that I might be infertile. Then, looking at me earnestly, Mike said, "Of course, I'd be happy if we could have a child together in the future. But the most important thing is that I love you, Emily. You're important to me. So even if we can't have children, I will always be by your side." He hugged me gently. I was so happy. I thought I wanted to spend my life with this man and decided to marry Mike. Soon after our marriage, we had our first child, Kyle, followed by our daughter, Lily. Perhaps not getting pregnant with my ex-husband was a matter of timing or compatibility. Raising children is hard, but we're living happily. Then one day, I attended a friend's wedding. During the middle of the ceremony, when it was time for greetings and mingling, I stepped out to go to the bathroom and saw my ex-husband John, whom I hadn't seen in 15 years.
Ugh!
Why is he here? I panicked for a moment, my mind going blank. But then I remembered that today's bride and groom were friends from college. It made sense for John to be there. I tried to ignore him and walk past, but he called out loudly, "Hey!" So he noticed me.
What? You've put on weight, haven't you? It's been so long since I've seen you.
John, seemingly drunk, talked loudly and spat while speaking.
You haven't changed a bit.
I added in my mind, still as unpleasant as ever. Then John called his family over. There was Jessica and their son. Seeing my face, Jessica smirked and said,
"Oh, it's been a while. Have you gained weight? Is it stress eating? Must be tough. I bet you're still an infertile woman with no one to take you, right?"
I was dumbfounded by their rude behavior and couldn't find the words to respond. I noticed their son hanging his head, blushing with embarrassment. He had very handsome features.
"Ah, I forgot to introduce him. This is my son. As you can see, he's cute like Jessica, right?"
Jessica, too, proudly bragged about their son.
He's handsome, smart, a real genius. Sorry to say, it seems like we're the only happy ones here.
They praised their son and looked down at me with smug smiles. However, their son seemed unhappy with his parents' behavior, seemingly displeased with them belittling someone else. He must be a very kind boy, I thought. But I had no time to deal with them. As I turned to leave, John grabbed my arm tightly, stopping me.
So, you cause our divorce because of your infertility, and then you have the nerve to extort money from us?
John was still holding a grudge about something that happened 15 years ago. If anyone should hold a grudge, it's me. Then Jessica also turned to me and said,
Yeah. You're a single, infertile woman, why would you need money? Families with children like us need it more, don't you think? Pay us back double the amount you took from us at that time.
I was dumbstruck by such selfish remarks, speechless, when John and Jessica's son spoke up.
Single means unmarried, right? But she's wearing a wedding ring on her left hand.
Pointed out by their son, John and Jessica stared intently at the ring on my left ring finger.
What? You're married?
John and Jessica's loud exclamations drew stares from the surrounding people. I was mortified. As I pondered what to do, I caught sight of a familiar face.
You shouldn't be so loud at a celebration like this. It's disturbing others. Maybe you should be more considerate? Mom, who are these scary-looking people?
Kyle. Lily. Yes, worried about my late return, Kyle and Lily had come to check on me. Lily, as usual, was outspoken, but it was rare for Kyle to speak so provocatively.
Mom, you're late coming back. Eh? Mom? You have kids? Yes, I do. Let me introduce them. This is my son, Kyle, and my daughter, Lily.
John seemed speechless, shocked that his ex-wife, whom he thought was infertile, had 2 children. Jessica was staring intently at my son. After a while, she muttered, in a strained voice,
That uniform!
She seemed fixated on my son's attire.
He came straight from school with his dad. It's not about that. That's the uniform of that famous private middle school. Huh? Oh, yes. Kyle's attending that prestigious private middle school.
Yes. Kyle excelled in his studies and was attending a well-known local private school.
It can't be. A child of yours, at that school. And my daughter, too. She plans to take the exam for the same school next year. That's right. And you know what? Kyle is amazing. He won a violin competition. Violin. I thought I recognized this boy. Wasn't he on TV recently? You saw that? Yes, he's been getting a lot of media attention lately. Today, he's coming back from violin practice. Impossible. That can't be.
John and Jessica were left gaping, frozen in shock.
You were supposed to be infertile. How could you have such?
I calmly addressed John's confusion.
I'm glad to see you two seem happy. As you can see, I'm filled with happiness too. Let's not involve each other anymore. We have nothing to do with each other now.
As I was about to leave with my children, my husband, Mike, appeared.
Hey. What's going on here? The main event is about to start again.
Seeing my husband, John's face turned pale.
President Smith! What?
Jessica too, upon seeing my husband, turned white and trembled.
Your husband is Smith, the young CEO of ABC Corporation who got the job last year, right?
Actually, my husband Mike works as the CEO of the parent company of Jessica's father's company. He was job hunting when the parent company approached him for a position, and that's how he switched jobs. I met Mike there, a man who was already popular and skilled. Last year, he was recommended by the then CEO and took over the role.
Yeah, it's Smith, but... Huh? What's with this atmosphere? What happened?
Sensing the uneasy air, my husband Mike looked puzzled, and that's when Kyle spoke up.
These people were saying mean things about our mom, calling her infertile and fat, so Lily and I came to help her. They heard it.
Kyle and Lily had overheard my ex-husband and his wife making rude comments about me. That's why Kyle had spoken up like that.
You guys are those.
The word infertile seemed to click something in Mike's mind, and his expression turned grim.
I had heard rumors, but never imagined they were this insensitive.
Then, John suddenly started to defend himself to Mike.
No, I mean, Mr. Smith, I would never say anything bad about your wife, right, Jessica? Why are you groveling so much? She's just his wife, right? I was the one who got yelled at by my father and suffered a lot because you made me pay her money for our affair. I'll never forgive you now. Jessica, what are you saying? If he dislikes us, our subcontracting company is finished. Think about that.
Realizing it was bad to be disliked by the CEO of their parent company, John started to flatter Mike, but Jessica, not satisfied, started arguing with him. What a ridiculous scene. Then, John and Jessica's son, who had been silent, burst out.
Stop it! Listening to you both is terrible. You're saying awful things about her, calling her fat and infertile, and now demanding money back. I'm ashamed. And what about this affair? Am I a child born out of an affair? Am I unwanted?
His voice cracked with tears. John and Jessica started to fumble for words.
Well, that's not.
As I realized the guests were staring at us. Jessica, noticing their gazes, blushed and looked down. Although I still can't forgive John and Jessica, their son seems to be a just and kind boy. He's innocent in all this. Thinking this, I was about to comfort their son, when my husband Mike spoke first.
Thank you. You stood up for my wife. You really are a kind boy,
he said, gently patting the boy's head. I followed with a smile.
But maybe I am a bit overweight. That's not true. Well, actually, I'm pregnant. My belly's getting bigger,
I said, stroking my belly. I'm currently pregnant with our third child. And on maternity leave. Seeing the boy with tears in his eyes, I added.
Your mom took great care of you in her belly, just like this. You're not unwanted. Your parents love you and are proud of you, right?
I looked at John and Jessica. The boy then asked them, really? In a hurry, they both nodded vigorously and said, yeah. You're our pride and joy. Absolutely. You mean everything to us. At this, the boy immediately broke into a wide smile. Seeing their son smile, I also felt a sense of relief.
Let's just remember that today is a day for celebration. Let's all head back to our seats.
Saying this, each family returned to their respective seats. And so, the turbulent scene came to a close. As the wedding ended and we were heading to the station, Jessica and John came up, holding hands with their son. Kyle and Lily had been intimidating the two who had insulted me, but Mike calmed them down with a wry smile. We're sorry. We're really sorry. It's too late, but for everything before and for today. We're truly sorry. And thanks for earlier, for our son. It was the first apology I had heard from them in over 15 years. Perhaps even people as terrible as them had changed a little after having a child. I laughed, really, it's too late now.
Well then.
With just that, I turned and started walking away. Kyle offered to carry my bags. Lily said, here, and draped a jacket over my shoulders. Even as children, they were considerate of my pregnancy.
All right. How about we make Dad's favorite hamburgers for dinner tonight? Kyle and Lily's favorite. Yay! Yay!
Thank you. With a vow to protect the smiles of my beloved family, I was moving away from the pains of the past.
Both of your parents didn't even finish high school. Cut ties with such low-life parents immediately.
My husband, whom I had always thought of as kind and dependable, began to scorn and belittle me the moment he found out my parents were middle school dropouts. I was taken aback and saddened by his sudden change in behavior, which came as a complete shock. My name is Julie Sutherland, a 33-year-old working housewife. I live with my 1-year-older husband, Tom, and our 4-year-old child, leading a busy life. As for my job, I work at a company run by my parents. I respect my parents for building their own business, and since I was young, I've been interested in their work. I was delighted when I got a job after thoroughly learning. So when Tom suggested I become a full-time housewife after we got married, I insisted on continuing my work. At that time, Tom respected my wishes, which made me very happy. We had a love marriage, and initially, we supported each other without any issues. Even when we had differing opinions, we would resolve them amicably and respect each other's views. Until then, I felt happy to have married a good man. However, at one point, Tom found out my parents were middle school dropouts and started to deride them. My parents' company may be small, but Tom had admired it until he started complaining just because they didn't have high school diplomas.
What does it matter if they didn't finish high school? Why do you suddenly care about that?
No matter their educational background, my parents currently have the ability to run a company. Education is important, sure, but it shouldn't be the only measure of a person. Up until then, Tom had built a good relationship with my parents, so I pleaded with him not to judge them solely on their educational attainment. But Tom couldn't accept my perspective and seemed displeased with me for defending them.
Dropouts are no good, right? Don't associate with such parents.
He even went as far as telling me to cut off my relationship with them. Without reconsidering his grudge against people without a high school diploma, Tom became even more stubborn and our relationship worsened. Moreover, from this time on, he began to strongly insist that I quit my job. Especially after our child was born, he started saying it even more frequently.
Quit your job already and focus on the housework. But you used to say it was fine for me to continue working.
My husband, who had once respected my decision, had now become pushy with his selfish ideas. Since he wasn't like this before, I was confused and sad but kept trying to convince him, hoping he would understand. However, no matter how many times I explained my reasons for wanting to keep working and the benefits it brought to our family, he consistently told me to quit. He seemed to truly believe quitting was for my benefit, belittling my desire to work. As a result, our once peaceful life, where we used to help each other, turned into days filled with endless arguments. The quarrels continued, and Tom's insults about my job and my parents increased, chilling our marital relationship. My parents had expressed a wish to celebrate our child's birthdays and graduation ceremonies together if possible, but my husband vehemently refused with harsh words. Furthermore, he wouldn't listen to me and would unilaterally decide on plans, which led me to consider divorce. Then, one day, Tom came home in high spirits because his promotion was confirmed. With the salary increase, he told me to quit my job.
With my pay raise, you don't need to work, right? Just quit and take care of the home.
Since he started telling me to quit my job, Tom stopped doing any housework he used to help with. Probably he was hoping I'd quit if the housework suffered. But I continued with the housework as usual and stood my ground when he used it as an excuse for me to quit. Although he claimed he was telling me to quit to reduce my burden, he didn't move a muscle to help with housework and childcare. His attitude only made my love for him grow colder. Now, seeing I wouldn't change even with housework as a reason, he was using money as the new argument. Indeed, we could live comfortably on Tom's salary alone without me working. Even considering our children's future, we can afford to live comfortably, so I didn't need to work forcibly. But I want to work. Ever since I was a kid, I watched my parents work with such vitality, and I've lived wanting to try my hand at their jobs. Working at my parents' company has always been a dream of mine. And when I actually started working there, far from being satisfied, I found myself wanting to work there even more, feeling it as my calling in life. That's why I've been pushing so hard to balance housework and my job, so of course, I won't quit.
I've said it over and over, I love my job. So I'm not gonna quit, I told him firmly.
My husband just laughed at me as if I was a joke, opposing the idea.
A woman's place is taking care of the home, isn't it? Besides, a poor company like that will go under in no time.
He mocked with an outdated view, belittling my parents' company. True, my parents' company is small and the building is old. But that doesn't mean the work we do is laughable. My parents' business is community-oriented, well-regarded by the locals, and cherished by its employees. I take pride in my parents and the company they've built, and I absolutely don't want to cave into my husband's demands. Annoyed at my husband for demeaning my parents and their company, I reiterated that I wouldn't quit my job. Then he brought up our kids as a reason.
You're always at work, barely involved with the kids. You should become a stay-at-home mom and be there for them, he argued. I really don't want to hear that from you, I retorted.
After work and on weekends, I make sure to spend time with our children. In contrast, my husband prioritizes his hobbies at home and seldom pays attention to the kids. Come to think of it, if he doesn't do housework or participate in childcare, what's the point of him being around? I've noticed that the kids barely react to my husband, who doesn't pay much attention to them, creating a vicious cycle. Reflecting on it, he has never really acted the way a father should.
A man says in the back, you know,
he'd say with a smug smile when pointing out my supposed lack of involvement with the kids. A father who only pursues his hobbies and constantly complains when at home, is he really necessary? Thinking this over, I've become more aware of the possibility of divorce. And the next morning, despite his complaints for me to quit my job, I ignored him and went to work. Though irritated with his mindset and attitude, my focus is now on work. Arriving at the office, I was ready to switch gears and give my best at work when unexpectedly, the president asked to see me in the reception room. Puzzled, I went to find a stern-looking man seated across from my father. It was clear from my father's expression that he was extremely upset. As I wondered what the matter could be, my father asked me to listen first.
This concerns you too, Julie. I'm sorry, but could we go over it from the beginning?
At my father's behest, the man across from him started speaking. The man, named Mr. Smith, had been the assistant project leader on a joint project with my father's company. The original leader hardly visited the site and gave almost no direction, so essentially, Mr. Smith was leading. The project was about constructing and designing a new store in collaboration with my father's company. The new store's concept matched well with the reputation of my father's company's buildings, which had an old-fashioned, comforting feel. So, they approached my father's company, and everything was going smoothly without any issues. But just as they were about to start the construction work, the leader abruptly decided to go with another company, snatching away the plans. This project was a major deal, and a significant amount of money had already been involved, so my father was understandably angry. Mr. Smith tried to salvage the situation, but the leader had already sabotaged him. He had falsified Mr. Smith's work hours and performance, leading to a false accusation at his company. Because of this, Mr. Smith was removed from the project, putting it in jeopardy. Other team members protested, but to no avail. So, today's visit was to apologize for the project coming to a standstill. After hearing them out, I realized I wasn't involved in this project. So, I was left wondering why I had been called here when Mr. Smith, already looking quite pale, turned even more apologetic. My father also turned a pained, sorry look my way. It's a tough truth for you to hear, he began. The shocking news was that the no-good leader in question was my husband. Normally, one might get mad and deny it if told their spouse was up to such things, but given my husband's usual behavior, I was more inclined to believe it. Actually, I even thought it might be a good reason to go ahead with a divorce I was considering. And it turns out he was still causing trouble. Then, both men, looking quite distressed, shared another fact with me. The leader had placed a young woman in the now vacant assistant leader spot. The two of them were seen together so often that it sparked rumors within the company of an affair.
Are you saying they might be having an affair? But it's just a rumor, right?
Despite my disbelief that my husband could be cheating, I had to ask for clarification, to which Mr. Smith regretfully confirmed.
While we can't say for sure it's an affair, they often dine together and are seen alone a lot, so it's almost certain.
Apparently, many employees had witnessed my husband in private rooms with this young woman and out and about together. Their behavior suggests it's more than just being work associates. The two of them spoke hesitantly, considering my feelings. Especially, my father had a troubled expression. My father knew how happy I seemed before and at the beginning of my marriage. Back then, I was all about loving my husband, so it must have been tough for him to break this news. But now, I've already got a reason for divorce, and to be honest, I'm even somewhat relieved, so the news of my husband's affair doesn't hit me hard.
Don't worry about it. Things haven't been working out between us for a while, and I'm actually considering a divorce, I reassured them.
When I mentioned my upbeat attitude about the divorce, my father looked shocked. If the affair is really happening, then I'll definitely be going after a fair amount of alimony, I said with a smile, and Mr. Smith seemed to regain some of his spirits.
Actually, I'm thinking of reporting to the company what the leader of this project's team has been doing. If things go well, I believe we can continue with this plan.
These words seemed to give my father some energy back. The three of us then started brainstorming a plan to bring my husband down. Fueled by all the demeaning and complaining I've endured from him, and now his cheating, I was fired up to give him a taste of his own medicine, contributing plenty of ideas. And behind the scenes, while my husband went about his usual business, we were making preparations in secret. We planned to keep him in the dark until the last possible moment before confronting him all at once. At the company, Mr. Smith led the effort to gather evidence of my husband's tampered reports and to prove that the project he claimed as his own wasn't actually his work. We had all the prep work and research for the project proposal on hand, and since my husband hadn't attended the meetings, the meeting minutes proved it. We submitted all this evidence along with a letter of protest from the entire team, and the company decided to conduct a factual check before giving my husband a chance to explain. As for me, I hired a private investigator to look into the affair. While waiting for the results, I tried checking his personal belongings. When I looked up infidelity countermeasures on the internet, it seemed that people who were cheating were often found out because they had items that hinted at the existence of someone else. So I decided to take a look through his bag, coat pockets, and dresser drawers to see if I could find anything. Thinking the more evidence of the affair, the better, I searched carefully without his knowledge but found nothing that seemed like proof of infidelity. I had expected to find women's items or telling receipts, but there was nothing, not a trace of another woman. This made me half suspect that the affair was just the imagination of the witnesses. But later on, when I saw the investigation results, it was clear my husband was indeed guilty. There were photos of my husband with a younger woman looking intimate, arm in arm, and even entering and exiting a hotel together. With my mind already set on divorce, I thought this was almost convenient. I realized then that I had no lingering feelings for him. Since I no longer regretted the decision to divorce him, I started packing my things so I could leave the house at any time and was waiting for the right moment to tell him. Meanwhile, my husband, oblivious to everything, was in a good mood about a potential promotion, persistently telling me to quit my job and continuing to belittle my parents. I kept responding as usual until one day, he lost his temper in a way I'd never seen before.
You really won't listen to me. You always put your parents first. We're married, you should be prioritizing your husband, he shouted.
But it's his fault for belittling my parents and dumping all the housework and childcare on me without lifting a finger to help. How am I supposed to rely on someone who's too busy to help when I ask? I almost sighed out of frustration at my do-nothing husband who only complains. Plus, he never listens during discussions, just gets angry when things don't go his way. Quick to anger and quick to insult my folks. Who would stand by such a partner? He wasn't like this in the early days of our marriage. I feel sad thinking about how things used to be. Up until now, I tried not to be too harsh with him because we were living together, but with divorce on my mind, I didn't hold back.
Then maybe you should finally stop badmouthing my parents. And you just dump all the housework and childcare on me. What kind of husband are you?
And with that, I confronted him directly for the first time. Not liking my stance one bit, my husband turned even redder with anger.
Shut up. Listen here, don't ever bring your parents to any family functions again. We're married, I won't even allow you to contact them. If you don't like it, then it's divorce, he yelled.
My husband, disliking my defiant attitude, threatened me with divorce as if to intimidate me. He thought I would be afraid of divorcing him, which just made me feel dumbfounded. Despite him never really acting like a husband, I wondered how he could say such things with so much confidence. Though I was internally rolling my eyes, I kept a solemn face and asked him,
"Are you okay with that?"
When he mentioned divorce, I felt a surge of relief inside, thinking I could easily get one, but I kept a serious face as I sought confirmation. Perhaps thinking I was distressed by the idea, he looked a bit smug as he replied,
"Yeah, you'd be lost without me. I'm quite the catch, but who'd look twice at a stubborn and dull woman like you?"
He seemed to think that I would be unable to fend for myself after the divorce. And even went on to mock my age and personality, suggesting I wouldn't be able to remarry. Facing his gloating smile, I calmly showed him the completed divorce papers.
"Understood. Then please sign the divorce papers." "What? Are you serious? You'd be in trouble without me, right?"
Shocked that I was considering divorce, he asked again, as if still trying to intimidate me. I retorted, loaded with all the frustration I'd accumulated.
"Life is easier without you around. It's exhausting to be with someone who does nothing but complain."
It's better not to have someone who doesn't help out with the family and just struts around. Life would clearly be more enjoyable without him, so I'd prefer it if he were gone. His displeasure at my seemingly happy reaction to the divorce only made him angrier.
"I'd be better off without you too."
In response to my words, he hastily signed the divorce form. The next early morning, I took the kids and the divorce papers, packed our bags, and left the house. I had already informed my parents the day before, so we immediately went to their place. They had been made aware of my intention to divorce, so everything was set up for us to live there, and we were able to move without any panic. That day, my husband not only lost the promotion he had been looking forward to but also his affluent lifestyle. Upon arriving at work, he was promptly called into the conference room, where he was confronted about the allegations Mr. Smith and the others had raised. In the conference room were the team members who had accused him and the young female employee rumored to have had an affair with him.
"What's this all about, all of a sudden?"
he asked, thinking it was a work-related discussion until he realized there was an auditor present, which rattled him. He was questioned about the project and his work behavior, and though confused, he tried to bluff.
"What are you talking about? This plan is definitely my work. Stop with these baseless accusations."
"But you can explain the details of this project plan, right?" However, with the evidence Mr. Smith and I had compiled, he couldn't explain the project plan he had claimed as his own. It was no surprise since he hadn't created it, nor had he reviewed the content thoroughly. When questioned about the project plan, he couldn't explain anything, whereas Mr. Smith could respond perfectly. Therefore, he couldn't prove that he hadn't stolen the credit and found no way out of his predicament. He was told that his promotion was off the table, and although he protested angrily, he was not taken seriously. Then, he was further grilled about the affair, and the confrontation with the young female employee ensued. She hadn't been briefed about the meeting and quickly slipped up.
"He said he'd give me favorable treatment in my job if I went along with it. I knew he was married, so I thought it was just part of my job."
She claimed she had been reluctantly involved with him because he had forced her. Now, she began to play the victim, trying to shift all the blame onto my husband.
"Don't spout nonsense. You're trying to make me the bad guy all by yourself."
My husband shouted back in anger, eventually lashing out with accusations about how she had been the one pursuing him. They both made wild claims against each other, which apparently turned into quite the argument. But thanks to the investigation results from the detective agency I had commissioned, neither could deny the affair. They were both deemed to have character issues that rendered them unreliable for their positions. My husband was demoted to a window-side position as a regular employee. And his salary was reduced to the point where he could barely afford to live on his own. His misconduct ensured that he would never be able to rise through the ranks at that company again. Someone who doesn't take their job seriously and just steals their subordinates' accomplishments shouldn't be able to get promoted. Moreover, my husband had been slacking off, never really putting in the effort at work to be considered excellent. He had a good front, and initially, some people seemed to be on his side, but once the evidence of his wrongdoing came to light, people quickly distanced themselves from him. This made his workplace environment uncomfortable, and with his past misdeeds, he found himself in a tough spot to find a new job, leaving him clinging to his windowside position. Furthermore, since I had hired a lawyer, I was able to demand alimony and child support from him. As we hadn't settled property distribution and other details yet, I hadn't filed the divorce papers at this point. And the alimony was set at $60,000. Additionally, child support was decided at $1,000 per month. The alimony was higher because of the verbal abuse I routinely received from my husband. Since deciding on divorce, I had recorded these instances, which contributed to the larger amount. As for the division of assets, there was no issue with the house since it was a rental, and it was decided not to split our savings. Since our marriage, my husband had been spending money on his hobbies and affairs with women, and my savings were more substantial, which is why I made this choice. When I contacted my ex-husband about the alimony and child support, he resisted paying such a large sum.
A kid needs their father. Let's get back together,
he suggested, probably thinking there was still hope since the divorce papers hadn't been filed yet. When he pressured me for reconciliation, which made me feel uncomfortable, I declined, and he ended up accusing me of being after his money. Facing his threatening tone, I calmly informed him that I was recording the conversation and that any further threats would just increase the alimony. After going that far, my ex-husband finally calmed down and agreed to pay, and he stopped contacting me afterward. Of course, I also demanded alimony from his mistress, and since she was younger, I heard that the alimony payment wiped out her savings. She had become an assistant leader but was demoted to a regular employee and had her pay cut. Rumors of her affair made it uncomfortable for her at the company, and it seems she resigned shortly after. Thanks to the hard work of Mr. Smith and his team, the company's transactions could proceed without any issues, bringing peace to both my marriage life and the company's operations. Despite trying not to care before, the condescending remarks from my ex-husband's parents and the belittling voices were indeed stressful, and I have felt a refreshing sense of liberation since the divorce. My husband seemed to think it's pitiful for a woman not to be able to remarry, but I don't feel that way. My children, too, haven't shown any sadness about their father's absence. Instead, they seem to laugh more at home than they used to. Observing my children's happiness, I'm confident that divorcing was the right call, and lighter in spirit, I dedicate myself to work and parenting today.
Someone like you is my brother's wife? You should release him.
I had thought I was getting along with my sister-in-law, but she showed her true colors when we were alone. I was taken aback by her drastic change in attitude, but I realized that this must be her true nature. My name is Jennifer, I'm 30 years old. It's been 4 years since I married my husband, Michael, who's 2 years older than me. We met through work and initially lived just the two of us. However, after my father-in-law passed away 2 years ago, we started living with my mother-in-law. I suggested this because I thought it would be tough for her to live alone, and we lived too far away to come quickly if something happened. Besides, my mother-in-law had quite a fortune, both from her own assets and the inheritance from my father-in-law. So there was also the worry that she might fall victim to a scam. Michael was concerned as well, and since the commute from his mother's place was no issue, we decided to move in with her. Our relationship with my mother-in-law was already good, so I wasn't worried, but living together turned out to be even more comfortable than I'd expected. We had similar hobbies and got along even better than before since we both were indoor types who liked the same things. So we enjoyed our time at home together. Perhaps because of this, my mother-in-law seemed happier and laughed more often, which Michael was also pleased to see. After moving in, I began to do housework and also started a part-time job at a local children's facility. It was a part-time gig about 3 times a week, but being around those energetic kids seemed to uplift my spirits too. Since moving in, my days have been more fulfilling than ever. I think living together was the right choice, but there was one problem. My sister-in-law, Emily, who's the same age as me. Emily was already married and out of the house when I married Michael, so I only saw her about once a year. When it was just the two of us, she often made snide remarks. Before, when there were others around, her attitude towards me was polite, so until then, I had thought we could be friends. The first time Emily directed her malice at me, I was dumbfounded. Since then, I found her unpleasant, but since we rarely met, I didn't think much of it. However, now that we were living in the same house, we saw each other often. Emily didn't live nearby, but she had been coming over almost every weekend even before. She'd have lunch and sometimes stay for dinner. Although she had her own family, I couldn't help feeling it was presumptuous, but my mother-in-law, being wealthy, didn't seem to mind. And while Emily was mean to me, she didn't act that way in front of my mother-in-law or Michael. For them, she was still their adorable daughter and sister. Especially Michael and Emily, who shared a love for outdoor activities since childhood and got along very well due to similar interests. I couldn't bring myself to tell my mother-in-law and Michael that Emily disliked me. "Hey, I'm back." "Oh, Jennifer. Could you take care of my children for me?" So, I ended up looking after her children while she spent time with Michael and my mother-in-law. Emily seemed to love her family, and perhaps because of my good relationship with them, she didn't take kindly to me, always finding chores for me to do. She never forgot to sneak in a mean comment in a whisper. "I've got 2 children and parenting is tough. You should be grateful I'm giving you this chance to practice." Emily would come over almost without fail on weekends, knowing that at her parents' home she could take a break from childcare and hand it off to me, acting as if she was doing me a favor. Her children were a bit chubby and rambunctious, and while I didn't mind looking after them, I was fed up with the constant snide remarks. I wanted to snap back, but I held my tongue in front of her children. Since Emily was always smiling on the surface, any retort from me could make me seem like the villain instead of her. So, I kept my replies safe and stayed quiet. To outsiders, Emily and I appeared to be chatting happily, leading my mother-in-law and Michael to comment on how well we got along, to which I could only respond with a vague smile. In this close-knit family, I couldn't just say, "Emily has a bad personality." And because I never fought back, Emily became more emboldened to bully me. "It's good that you can practice parenting now. Make sure you do it properly, okay? And you're not just leaving all the housework to mom, right? Since you're living together, you should do it perfectly." Especially after my mother-in-law, who seemed so happy to do crafts together, it felt all the more like she was snapping at me out of irritation. "Sucking up to mom, you're such an old-fashioned woman." It seems my sister-in-law believes that I have a better relationship with her mother than she does. Maybe it's because our hobbies, as well as our personalities, are similar, but I feel calm when I'm with my mother-in-law. She feels the same way, and my sister-in-law doesn't like that we get along so well, so she complains to me. Every time we meet, she always has a snide comment for me, but I just let it slide without provoking her. It felt like a child's tantrum even though we're adults, so I never got down about her sarcastic remarks. Sometimes I do housework better and faster than she does, so her complaints often sound like sour grapes. Lately, however, the comments have started to focus on the fact that I don't have kids yet. From this point on, I couldn't brush off her snide remarks as easily. "It's been about 3 years since you got married, right? Why no baby yet?" My sister-in-law, with 2 children, would smirk as if her position was superior to mine because I had none. "Children are gifts, they're not about timing." I was concerned about not having children, so I tried to act unaffected in front of her, but it was disheartening inside. I work part-time at a children's facility and am involved with kids a lot, but I still wish I could have my own soon. When she brings up children, I can't come back with a clever retort like I used to. She just smirks triumphantly at me. Now into the 4th year of marriage. I've been continuously bothered by my sister-in-law's comments about not being able to have a baby, so I decided to visit a doctor. Her words had made me anxious about possibly being infertile. I've been consulting with my husband more, and he's been reassuring me that there's no need to worry. "I'd be happy if we had kids, but the most important thing is that you're with me. There's no need to rush." He also said, "Let's work on having children together." That made me feel like I had met a good man. My husband's support meant that, although I felt anxious because of my sister-in-law's mean comments, I didn't take it too seriously. We went to the hospital for tests, thinking it would be nice to get checked out, just to be sure. But we were in for a shock with the unexpected results.
What? No way.
I had to ask several times to make sure it wasn't a dream, but I almost burst into tears when I realized it was real. I was actually pregnant, about 2 months along. My menstrual cycle often fluctuates, so I just thought it was late this time, but I never imagined I was pregnant. I had thought that I might be infertile, so this news was incredibly welcome. I had no typical pregnancy symptoms, so the unexpected results surprised me, but my husband and I were delighted. I was more smiley than before we went to the doctor, and when we got home, I shared the news with my mother-in-law, and the three of us celebrated together. I stroked my still flat belly, conveying my happiness to the baby that was going to be born. With this news, all my previous anxieties vanished, and I eagerly awaited the birth of my baby. As for my sister-in-law's reaction, she continued her sarcasm when it was just the two of us. Maybe it was because the content of her sarcasm decreased, or perhaps she didn't like seeing me so consistently happy about my pregnancy, but she seemed out of sorts. To me, excited about the baby, her sarcasm felt like a gentle breeze, not bothering me at all. However, at the next checkup, I was devastated to learn I had miscarried.
What? Why?
I asked the doctor, nearly crying. I had already been thinking a lot about parenting methods and things I wanted to do with the child, looking forward to the birth, so the miscarriage was unthinkable. I had researched pregnant life and didn't recall doing anything that could have caused a miscarriage. The shock of the miscarriage and the self-blame were almost crushing. The doctor explained that early miscarriages are relatively common. Sometimes due to chromosomal abnormalities, they can happen even when there is nothing wrong on the mother's side. I was told not to dwell on it too much, but I couldn't help it. I had been longing for a baby, so when I finally got pregnant, I was over the moon. But after suffering a miscarriage, the joy I had been feeling until then turned into a profound shock that left me deeply saddened. My husband and mother-in-law were worried and tried to cheer me up, but because I had been so looking forward to having a baby, I found it hard to bounce back, and couldn't manage to return to my normal routine. Moreover, my sister-in-law's sarcasm seemed to intensify after she heard about the miscarriage, deepening my depression.
What on earth did you do to miscarry? You're not cut out to be a mother. And once you have one miscarriage, aren't you likely to never have children? What's the point of being married if you can't have a baby?
She would say these cruel words with such glee, it was clear she enjoyed hurting me. Because of this, I began to despair that I might never be able to have a baby. Normally, I would have snapped back at her, but I was so down that I just took it all by myself. I tried to act normal at my part-time job, but even the kids there could tell I wasn't my usual self and expressed their concern, which only made me feel worse. I knew I couldn't go on like this, yet I couldn't shake off the feeling of being listless and devoid of energy. This distraction may have led to me falling down the stairs on my way to work, resulting in an injury that required hospitalization. I tumbled and bruised myself all over, fracturing my right arm and leg severely. Thankfully, a passerby called an ambulance, and I ended up being admitted to the hospital for a month. I felt terrible for worrying my husband and mother-in-law, who came to the hospital looking so concerned.
We were afraid you had gotten reckless because you were so down. It's a relief you're fine. You've been losing so much weight, and now an injury on top of that. We were so worried.
Seeing their tearful, worried faces, I realized just how much concern I had caused them. I had lost my appetite and weight from all the distress, which only added to their worries. It finally hit me just how neglected my body had become, not just from the injury, but from lack of care in general. I had forgotten to look after my skin and hair because I had no appetite. However, their words because of my injury made me decide to change my mindset.
I'm sorry for worrying you. But I won't be down anymore. I'll recover from this injury quickly,
I declared with newfound energy in my voice. Saying it out loud seemed to boost my spirits even more. Though the injury was unfortunate, it helped me to finally start moving past the trauma of the miscarriage. I was fortunate to have a private room in the hospital, which allowed me to rest peacefully. Thanks to my mother-in-law who generously covered the extra cost for it. The facilities were quite comfortable, which made my stay much easier. The beautiful flowers brought by my husband and mother-in-law also brightened up the stark white room. Since my dominant arm was out of commission, they often visited to keep me company and brought things I could enjoy without using my right arm. I started practicing writing with my left hand, and although it was inconvenient due to my injury, I was able to spend my time comfortably. My co-workers from the part-time job also visited, and the children sent a card with their clumsy handwriting saying, "Get well soon," which warmed my heart. The thought of showing everyone a healthier me after getting out of the hospital filled me with vigor. However, the one thing that still caused me stress was when my sister-in-law visited alone. She would never say anything mean when others were around, but alone in the room with me, she could be quite nasty. With no way to escape in the private room, I felt trapped. It didn't feel right to call for a nurse for such matters. So I just had to endure her snide remarks until someone else came or she decided to leave. She would often come just to deliver her unpleasant comments, which made me wonder if she had too much free time on her hands. But once, when I pretended to be asleep, she left soon after arriving, so I began to fake sleep whenever she was expected to visit, which thankfully reduced the number of her nasty comments. Finally, the day came when I was set to be discharged.
You're gonna be out soon. We were thinking of throwing a little celebration party for you at home once you're out. What do you think?
My husband and mother-in-law suggested excitedly.
Wow, I can't wait,
I replied, genuinely touched by their thoughtfulness.
Emily will be happy to hear about your recovery. She's been worried about you.
My mother-in-law said that, which meant even Emily would be there. It made me feel a bit disappointed. But my in-laws were oblivious to Emily's treatment towards me, so I couldn't really express my concern. I wasn't thrilled about my sister-in-law coming over, but I figured as long as I wasn't alone with her and stuck close to my husband and mother-in-law during the party, it would be okay. When I got home from the hospital, the house was already festively decorated with bright, colorful flowers, which lifted my spirits for the first time in a while. The table was full of delicious-looking food, some cooked by my mother-in-law and some bought from stores. Right when everything was almost ready, my sister-in-law arrived with a big bag in tow.
Sorry I'm late. Congratulations on your discharge, Jennifer,
she said with a perfect smile, and I thanked her with a smile of my own. Despite being taken aback by her previous snide remarks in my hospital room, I was amazed at how amazing her acting skills were. We all sat down, glasses filled with drinks in hand.
Here's to Jennifer's discharge,
Michael toasted, and we started our meal. I didn't drink alcohol because of my injury, but the other three were pouring it liberally. Especially my sister-in-law, who brought her own and drank generously without bothering me, which made me feel relieved that the meal would go smoothly. Even with my right hand out of commission, I managed to eat by myself thanks to the easy-to-use utensils my mother-in-law had prepared for me. And my left-handed skills had improved. As the food started to dwindle and we were about to wrap up, my sister-in-law handed me a gift.
Oh, I almost forgot. This is for your discharge. Open it when you're alone.
She gave it to me with a flushed, drunken face.
Thanks so much.
She had a lot of baggage considering it was just alcohol, but I never expected that my sister-in-law would have the idea of celebrating my discharge from the hospital. I was surprised that she'd thought to give me a discharge gift, as it had not crossed my mind she would do something like that.
Wow, a discharge gift?
That's sweet. Thanks, Michael said, sounding impressed and a bit tipsy. My mother-in-law smiled happily at what seemed like a caring and close-knit family scene. After that, my sister-in-law excused herself to use the bathroom before heading out. My mother-in-law and Michael told me to take it easy and sit while they started cleaning up. With my injury, I took their advice and sat on the couch, looking at the present she'd given me. It wasn't very heavy, wrapped in flower-patterned paper with an orange ribbon which was a cheery combination. However, I had my doubts. It was unusual for my sister-in-law to give me a gift. And her whispering, "Open it when you're alone," sounded downright suspicious. With her out of the room, I decided to open the present right away. Inside, I found items that were peculiar to receive as a present for my situation, which made me pause in confusion.
What is this?
I exclaimed, dropping the gift in shock.
What's wrong? What happened?
Michael and my mother-in-law rushed over, confused as they looked at the dropped present I was pointing at. This. I didn't think I could explain it well, so I pointed to the present I had dropped. Then, they looked at it curiously and seemed just as confused as I was. Inside were baby items and craft supplies. Sure, I hadn't given up on the idea of having children one day, and I did enjoy crafting. But it had only been 6 months since my miscarriage, and with my injury, I couldn't even do crafts if I wanted to. The contents were so mismatched for a discharge gift. Giving baby items to someone still recovering from a miscarriage and an injury felt like a deliberate insult. Had I not been on the path to recovery, seeing those baby items could have devastated me. They were also confused because it was not intended to be given as a congratulations on my discharge from hospital, considering my situation. The perplexity turned to anger when we found a message card inside. It should have contained uplifting words, but instead, it was filled with malice from my sister-in-law. "A useless wife should just leave. Try having kids or doing crafts if you can."
Huh? What?
At first, they were both stunned into silence, perhaps because they had thought my sister-in-law and I got along well. But it wasn't long before they started to get angry about what Emily had done. Just then, Emily came back from the bathroom and entered the room, which led my husband Michael to confront her.
Hey! What were you thinking giving this to Jennifer?
He demanded, his voice thundering in sudden anger. Emily looked confused at first, but upon seeing the gift wrap in Michael's hand, she seemed to realize what had happened. Huh? You opened it?
I told you to look at it when you were alone.
However, whether it was because she was drunk or just didn't care, Emily didn't seem the least bit sorry and instead complained to me. Michael's anger only grew at her attitude.
How could you give such a thing? What were you thinking?
But Emily, undeterred and as if it was the most natural thing to say, retorted.
Well, it's pointless to have a wife who can't have kids, who's hurt and lost her worth, who can't do anything right. You should just divorce her and marry someone better.
Despite Michael's intense shouting, Emily remained calm and continued to insult me. She even went as far as to tell Michael, "I can introduce you to someone nice." Delighted with her own suggestion, Emily started laughing out loud. Michael, red-faced and fists clenched, seemed too furious to speak. In the midst of this, we heard my mother-in-law Jennifer's sigh. Then my mother-in-law, who appeared to have calmed down, said softly, almost to herself,
"I'm going to cut ties with you."
At the word "cut ties," Emily looked at me triumphantly, mistaking my mother-in-law's intent as agreement with her.
"That's right. We don't need someone like her in the family,"
she said and started laughing again, but she froze at my mother-in-law's next words.
"I'm cutting ties with you, Emily." "What?"
Emily's confusion was evident, and suddenly she seemed to sober up and began to panic.
"Why? We're family, right? If anyone should be cut ties, it should be Jennifer, not me."
Emily protested, unable to accept the idea of being disowned, but my mother-in-law continued firmly.
"Someone who cannot think of others' feelings, who hurls such malice, is not our family. Don't bother me again because I won't be buying any of your husband's products anymore. That'll hurt us. Your buying affects my husband's sales."
Emily's husband was in sales, and thanks to Jennifer often obliging Emily's requests, she regularly purchased the products he sold, which were not commonly bought due to their high price. Emily cried and pleaded as stopping these purchases would impact her husband's performance.
"Stop it. We're family. Think of my children, they'll suffer too. You're no sister or family of mine anymore. Don't show up in front of me again."
In his rage at Emily's insults towards me, Michael dragged her out, along with her belongings, and locked her out of the house. They ignored her knocks and pleas to be let back in. She lingered outside for a while but eventually left, presumably going back to her own place. Later on, Jennifer informed Emily's husband that she would no longer purchase his products, explaining the recent events. This led to Emily being reprimanded severely. She had been a homemaker receiving an allowance from her husband, which now seemed to have been cut off. The lack of spending money and the stern treatment from her husband seemed to have left her distressed, causing her to act out, making her increasingly unwelcome among her own parents and family. It's obvious that being mean or harassing others will get you disliked. I no longer meet with Emily, but I hope she takes this opportunity to reflect and change. Afterwards, Emily persistently tried to contact Michael and Jennifer, but they soon blocked her calls. They even went as far as to cut ties with her. Michael and my mother-in-law also apologized to me for not realizing sooner how Emily had been treating me. In turn, I apologized for not confiding in them about it. Once Emily was out of the picture, I stopped being harassed and, free from stress, my injuries healed, and I was able to return to work cheerfully. The children were delighted with my return, and that made me happy. 2 years later, I finally had my baby I had longed for, and I was moved to tears. While I'll never forget my first baby, I'm determined to cherish and care for my baby. Don't talk to me, I'm tired. With his eyes shifted coldly, John pushed my shoulder to chase me out of his sight and walked away to change his clothes. Wait, I tried to call out, but no voice came. As John's heartless figure of his back disappeared from view, a wave of dizziness hit me, and I found myself weakly kneeling on the spot.
No way! He didn't show any emotion.
I've been holding back so much until now. Maybe it's partly my fault. Perhaps John is just busy with work. I've been desperately searching for reasons to convince myself of this. I believed that if I changed, John would return to his old self. For that, I've done everything I could. But still, John didn't change. That's why I resorted to the last option. I had resolved that this was really the last time, and with determination, I had spoken. Let's end this cleanly with a divorce. It was at that moment I had decided. There was a new message on John's smartphone, which was on the table. Without thinking, I looked at it and was shocked.
What's this?
Seeing that, I made a vow in my heart. There's nothing else to do but brace myself. I'll show that man what I'm made of. My name is Emily Simpson, 26 years old. Just the other day, I left home after getting married to John, whom I had dated for about 3 years. It might sound a bit self-serving to say, but I've been the apple of my family and quite adored. Because of that, the day I left home, the whole family cried. Be happy, Emily. John, I'm counting on you to assure Emily a joyful life of marriage. Of course. John answered with a confident smile, even under the pressure of my father's words. I'm really counting on you. There are 2 reasons why my father pressed the point so much. The first is because John is divorced. Moreover, he ended his first marriage in just 6 months. The reason for the divorce was said to be irreconcilable differences, but the brevity of the marriage is still concerning. While my father consented to the marriage, he had always been worried about that. As a man myself, I completely understand how you feel. That's why I want to settle things in my own way today. John declared with a raised voice, then pulled out something he had brought with him. It was a blank divorce form. This may seem like an unconventional act, but John said it with a serious face. If I ever fail to make you happy, please submit this. As my father stood there confused, John continued. I'm sorry for worrying Emily's parents since I have a history of divorce. Consider this a sort of insurance. It's something I hope to never use. It's my own way of showing my commitment to making Emily absolutely happy. Please, take it. My father, though bewildered, seemed to understand John's sincere intentions. He nodded silently and accepted it. This is the second reason my father's been worried. John, he's quite the character, always playing the clown. I get it. I believe you. My father nodded with a complex look on his face. That's how our married life started. I wouldn't say it was the marriage I dreamed of, but I was looking forward to it. Yet, what awaited me was an unexpected kind of hell. After we got married, as always, I would wake up earlier than John every day, get things ready, and send him off with a smile. Have a great day. See you later. Before we were married, John would respond with a hug and a kiss, waving and saying, I'm off. I'll do my best, love you, Emily. But after we got married, John changed. Yeah. That was all he would say before leaving the house. His indifference was so shocking that at first, I wondered if he was feeling unwell. Even when he came home, John was strange. Welcome home. Want to have dinner? Or take a bath? I'd greet him with these usual lines. To which John would lazily reply with just one word, bath. Are you okay? Feeling sick? I asked worriedly, but John just glanced at me coldly and said, not really. Looking back, maybe I should have been grateful he even responded at all. It's been a week since we got married, and now I get no response from John at all. When he's in a good mood, I can at least get a word or a gesture from John, but the problem is when he's in a bad mood. When he's grumpy, he ignores me completely. Hey, don't ignore me. It has always been like this since we got married. Did I do something? No response from John. Answer me. When I get so down that I'm about to cry, John sees it and lets out a big sigh. You think crying will solve everything? Must be nice being a woman, that simple. I want to deny it, but I can't stop the tears. All I could do was bow my head in silence, hiding my tears. My father runs his own company. I'm what you'd call a CEO's daughter. Before I got married, I worked as an office clerk at my father's company. That's where I met John. I processed a lot of the sales invoices that salesman John submitted. We got to know each other through that, and he asked me out. He seemed really surprised when he found out I was the CEO's daughter, but I was happy about it. It meant he saw me for me, not just as the CEO's kid. Back then, John listened to my stories intently and always responded with a smile. It seems such him hasn't existed anymore. I wish I hadn't gotten married if it was going to be like this. I wonder if something's going on with him. Did I do something wrong? I racked my brain but couldn't come up with anything. The only thing that could have triggered such a change in John was getting married. Some people do change after marriage, getting too comfortable or lax. I believe it happens to some degree. But with John, it's more than just some degree. If I had known he was like this before we got married, I never would have married him. I pulled out a piece of paper from a file I kept in the drawer of my desk. It was the blank divorce paper that John had given me that day. I wondered if submitting this to the courthouse would bring back the John the first knew before. Days went by as I repeatedly looked at the divorce paper and then put it back. One day, when I came back from shopping, John was standing there with a menacing look, waiting for me. It was broad daylight on a weekday. Why was he home? As I tried to smile and said welcome back, John slammed his hand on the table. Startled by the noise, I stumbled and fell. John stepped closer, looking down at me with cold eyes, and held up a piece of paper. You know what this is? He asked. In my fear, I just nodded. What John was holding was the divorce paper. It was always supposed to be in my drawer. How? Then it hit me. I might have forgotten to put it back after looking at them before I went shopping as I usually do. Do you want to divorce me? I couldn't say it wasn't true. Life with John lately has been mentally exhausting. If this is how it's going to be, I'm considering divorce.
Come on. John, you've been so weird since we got married. You ignore everything I say now. This isn't happiness.
John muttered, is it my fault, as he stared at the divorce paper. I'm fine with it if you want a divorce.
What? But just remember, it's your fault, okay? You're the problem for not supporting your husband as a wife should.
John waved the divorce paper teasingly. But, wait. You promised Dad. I started to remind him that he vowed to make me happy, but John just sneered as if he guessed what I was about to say. I promised to make you happy, is that what you're saying? Just like a little princess, living in a fantasy land.
That's cruel.
You and your dad are so naive.
We're just from different worlds. Maybe you should experience being broke for once, for your own good.
I didn't understand what John meant, but from that day, he stopped covering living expenses completely. To add insult to injury, he even took away the credit card that one's family could use. Originally, I had shortened my working hours because John wanted me to. I want to be greeted with a smile when I come home, he had said, so I decided to work a shorter time to fulfill his wish. Right now, as my job is part-time, I have a small income. It seems the rent and the utility bills have been paid, but the biggest problem is the food expenses. Please, we're out of food. I need money to live. I begged John for money, though it was humiliating. John just smiled smugly and said something outrageous. Don't worry.
I'll just eat out. What? Wait a minute.
No matter how much I pleaded, he completely ignored me, and in the end, I didn't get any contribution for living expenses. John has been coming home in the early hours of the morning day after day. I managed to get by with whatever food we had left and some instant meals, but I was at my wit's end. On the day John finally came home on time after a long while, I blurted out the words that had been on my mind for so long. You don't contribute financially, and you don't talk to me.
This isn't happiness, this isn't even a marriage. If this is how it's gonna be, if you're not going to change, I want a divorce.
If this made John change even a little, there might still be hope. If he doesn't change at all, then it's time for me to give up. It was my last resort. I waited anxiously for John's response. John hung his head and, scratching it furiously, said in a low voice, "Don't talk to me, I'm tired." With his eyes shifted coldly, John pushed my shoulder to chase me out of his sight and walked away to change his clothes. Wait, I tried to call out, but no voice came. As John's heartless figure of his back disappeared from view, a wave of dizziness hit me, and I found myself weakly kneeling on the spot.
No way! He didn't show any emotion.
I've been holding back so much until now. Since we got married, I wondered if it was partly my fault that John had changed his attitude so drastically, like he was a different person. Maybe it's because he's busy with work, I thought. I was looking for reasons to convince myself. I believed that if I changed, John would return to his old self. For that, I've done everything I could. But still, John didn't change. That's why I resorted to the last option. I had resolved that this was really the last time, and with determination, I had spoken. But there was not a hint of perturbation on John's face. Normally, wouldn't a man show some panic when his wife brings up divorce? Instead, John looked incredibly bothered. Seeing that face, I knew. John no longer loved me. Let's end this cleanly, divorce. There's nothing good about continuing this marriage. I'm hungry, I might as well pack my bags right now. I slowly stood up and headed for the drawer where the divorce paper was kept. Then I noticed John's smartphone screen flickering on the table. It looked like he had received a message. I didn't mean to look, but what I saw was shocking.
What's this?
The screen was filled with an overwhelming number of heart symbols. I instinctively picked up the phone to check the message. Thanks for last night. Let's stay over and snuggle again soon. The sender was someone named Rachel. I racked my brain, but I had no idea who Rachel could be. I checked towards the bathroom. John still showed no signs of coming out. Looking back at the smartphone, which was carelessly left unlocked. No way. I sighed at first glance. The more I looked, the more evidence of infidelity I found. Just from the messages, I could tell how close he was with Rachel, and there were even photos of them cozily snuggling up together. To leave such clear evidence without even setting a lock, how careless could he be? Or maybe he thought it was fine if I found out. He fools around me, doesn't he? I found myself eerily calm. I recorded John's phone screen with my own, noting down anything that might serve as evidence. Once I finished and put his phone back on the table, John came out of the bath. Without a word and no follow-up to earlier, he retreated to his room. It was plain and simple, John had been unfaithful. That's why he'd been so indifferent. In my sorrow, I came to terms with it. The next day, I started the process of divorcing John. No more hesitation, no more confusion. All that was left was the anger at the reality of being betrayed. First, I needed to find out who Rachel was. Since it's best to rely on professional help for certainty, I decided to hire a private investigator. At the same time, I started doing my own research. If John was cheating, his recent overtime and working weekends were suspicious. With my father's help, I could quickly verify the facts. It pained me to worry him, but it had to be done. I had to brace myself. And then, I would show him in revenge. The hardest part of preparing for the divorce was having to see John's face even during such times. I used to find that face so dear, but now, I just wanted to slap it. Perhaps my feelings showed that. John spoke to me first unusually, saying, "Hey, you're looking uglier than usual, you feeling sick or something?" Couldn't he have said something nicer? I smiled and replied, "I'm fine. Once I'm ready, I won't need to be here anymore." Over the weekend, as John went off to his usual work, I decided it was time to act. I told everything to my father. He was furious and immediately arranged a new place for me to move into. I had planned to go back to my parents' house at first, but my sister had just returned home to let her baby see them. Considering all the possibilities, it wasn't feasible for me to stay there. Instead, my father arranged for me to stay in a mansion worth $2 million. That a relative was about to put up for sale. They weren't in a rush to sell, so they let me stay there. My father even gave me enough money for my immediate needs, so my life was back to normal. In fact, it was more comfortable than before.
Hey, where the hell are you?
It was 3 days after I left the house when John called me in shock. When I responded with a nonchalant guess where, John's voice was high-pitched and frantic.
"And the divorce paper is missing. You didn't, did you?"
I was surprised too. He had actually noticed the divorce paper was gone. Had he panicked and searched for it after realizing I was gone? Anyway, this was the first time I saw John so flustered. Even over the phone, I could vividly imagine him panicking, and I couldn't help but laugh a little. "What do you mean what?"
"I just went and filed it at the office."
When I answered calmly, John made a ridiculous sound of shock. "What? Why would you do that?"
"Oh, come on, you said it yourself. If I ever fail to make Emily happy, please submit this, you said with such confidence, remember?" "But that was just to reassure your parents."
So he was panicking because I actually filed for divorce, something he intended only as a performance.
"Besides, I told you the other day, didn't I? If this lifestyle continued, I'd file for divorce."
But at that time, I was just tired. I talked to my father, you know. "Your department isn't that busy, is it?" I cut off John's attempt to take advantage of his fatigue to excuse himself. He was confused. Well. He always claimed to be busy, constantly signaling how busy he was. Indeed, he came home late and often worked on weekends. And I, without any suspicion, just worried. But I should have questioned it. Should have checked whether he was actually going to work or not. I thought it was odd, you know? When I met with Father yesterday, I asked him. He was puzzled too. He said it's strange, there might be the occasional overtime, but working weekends? Hardly ever.
"No, that's..." "Hey, you weren't working, were you? What kept you so busy every week? Where were you going?"
No response from John. I knew it. He couldn't answer. He must be desperately searching for an excuse in his head right now. John is smart and smooth-talking. But this time, whatever he says is pointless. Because I already know everything. Rachel, right? She's quite the cutie, isn't she? I could hear John gasp over the phone.
Why?"
Private investigators are quite skilled, aren't they? They secured photos and videos as evidence right away. I glanced at the photos and the report in my hand as I read them aloud. Rachel Smith, a 22-year-old working as an office clerk in accounting. Oh, she's more than a decade younger than you, isn't she? I'm also 8 years apart from you, John. Looks like you have a thing for younger women. Her place is a second-floor apartment near the station, right? So this is where you've been going every week.
Emily, wait, I mean, Miss Smith is.
Don't be so formal, you call her Ray Ray, don't you?
That's such a cute nickname, Ray Rayda.
John was actually quite the baby. He used to cling to me a lot before we got married. Back then, I found it sweet that John, who is 8 years older than me, was so affectionate, but now just the thought of it makes me recoil.
Oh, yes. The conversations with Ray Ray are well documented as evidence too. Wait for me to leave my wife, really? That's such a cliché line from a married man.
Couldn't you come up with anything better? According to the detective, John really looked down on me. Ray Ray asked, laughing, "What if your wife finds out?" And John replied, "Doesn't matter. She's on the way now." Can you believe that?
Wait, Emily. You're misunderstanding something. Just meet with me, please.
Yeah, I figured we needed to meet at least once. The next night, the meeting was set, with Rachel coming along. The location was the mansion I was renting. John arrived at the appointed time looking restless, glancing around nervously. "What's with this mansion?" "It's the house I'm renting. It's worth $2 million. $2 million. John's voice cracked in disbelief as my father watched him intently with a stern look. "I see your father is also here today." John's eyes darted back and forth uneasily. "Of course. You brought Rachel along, it would be unfair otherwise. Plus, this affair is between employees, so it's better to have my father, the company's CEO, accompany me." John replied with a strange smile, "Right." My father had been staring down John with a demonic expression the whole time. Rachel was a small, cute woman with light-colored hair. But she seemed to have a surprisingly strong will. As soon as the discussion started, she glared at me and said,
"I'm a victim too. I had no idea John was married. And now, to be called out to a place like this so suddenly, it's displeasing."
Rachel stated this with a snort. An intense character indeed. I was taken aback, but even more so, John had gone pale.
What? What are you talking about? You're the one who pressed me to leave my wife quickly.
That was just a joke. Rachel turned away with a huff, and John's face was flushed with anger. "Why do I even bother with a woman like her?" he muttered under his breath. Hearing this, Rachel snapped back, and they started arguing right in front of me.
The nerve of you! As if I would ever seriously fall for an old man like you. What? You think this is my fault? You're the one who said our company was going down. That it was on the decline. That's why I broke it off with Emily.
What? Apparently, right after our marriage, Rachel had whispered these things to John. The company is on the brink of bankruptcy. If it continues like this, even you, as her husband, will lose out. At first, John didn't pay much attention, but Rachel had a way with words, and he started to take her seriously. Moreover, seeing how I was overly considerate and nice to him, he was convinced that our company was indeed failing. "I thought you were buttering me up just to saddle me with debts." "What?" "I was just trying to be nice because I thought you were tired. And everyone's been too kind. I thought something was up. That was probably because I'm the CEO's daughter, and they were just being respectful. Anyways, the idea that my father's company was in trouble was a complete misunderstanding. Father was there and affirmed it himself. Thanks to everyone, we're actually doing great. There's no way we're going bankrupt anytime soon." Upon hearing my father's words, John collapsed to his knees, looking defeated. I had a bad feeling about this. So, what was all this for? In the end, John had just fallen for Rachel's schemes. Rachel was just curious about what kind of man John, who had married the CEO's daughter, was, and that's why she approached him. At first, he paid no attention to her. So she lied to grab his attention, saying, "This company is finished. You, married to the boss's daughter, you're in danger too." Fearing a joint downfall with us, the company's executives, John probably started ignoring me, thinking of an amicable divorce. I was just duped, can't you see, Emily? Okay? With a twisted face, John tried to get closer to me. Maybe you were just duped, sure. That's right. So let's not talk about a divorce. But you know, this has made it crystal clear to me. John looked up at me, puzzled. It means that this man would be the first to run away if we were ever in the same dire straits. Even now, he'd cheated without any discussion with me. And instead of asking for a divorce outright, he'd been cowardly enough to manipulate me into saying it first.
We took vows, for better, for worse, remember? You'd abandon me in a heartbeat if I got sick. That's not true. I wouldn't do that, Emily. Please, listen to me.
There's nothing more to say. I just wanted to know why you were ignoring me. Never thought it'd turn out that I did nothing wrong. We'll talk through the lawyer from here on out. Lawyer? John's face went pale.
You think you can cheat so brazenly and not be blamed? I'll be sure to pay you back, John and Rachel. Wait, please! I might even lose my place at the company.
As John's voice trembled, Rachel also let out a cry of despair.
No! That's not fair. It was just a joke, after all. It's his fault for falling for it.
They scorned each other, each insisting they weren't in the wrong. Such an ugly sight, it made one sick to watch. Was I really putting up with all this pain for a whole month for these people? It's pitiful, even to myself. I smiled at the arguing pair and said, I get it now. You two are perfect for each other. You're so alike. I'm glad I stepped back. Well, since we won't be seeing each other anymore, goodbye.
Wait! Emily!
My father gently put his arm around me, shielding me. We then left the scene. From behind, John kept calling my name, but I completely ignored him without looking back. Later on, I divorced John and got a spousal support from John. It seems John had a decent amount of savings, so he paid me quite an amount. Rachel's parents were mad when they knew what had happened and severely chewed her out. As for the company, while my father was raging about firing them, I was wondering what to do, but it turns out the two of them couldn't stand the stares and offered their resignation. I was relieved, but my father was the happiest of all. John was crying until the end, persistently clinging to me. If that were true, he shouldn't have done what he did. What John probably missed was the title of being the CEO's son-in-law. The thought of never seeing his face again is refreshing. My family welcomed me warmly when I returned home as a divorcee. I also went back to my job as an office worker. I thought my colleagues would handle me with kid gloves, but surprisingly everyone welcomed me back without fuss. People were saying behind your back, why would someone like you choose a guy like that? When someone slapped my back and said that, I couldn't help but burst into laughter. If I ever decide to marry again, at least I'll avoid someone who acts as a good person just outside.
This car is now mine and my girlfriend's.
Despite getting caught cheating, Lucas talks confidently. I can't help but be thoroughly amazed by his attitude. Why is he so cheerful? Why does he act so superior towards me? I even wondered if he and I see the world completely differently. But if he's willing to take this car, I couldn't be happier. The monthly loan is $6,000, but he'll figure something out.
All right then, I hope $6,000 for the loan will be okay.
When I accepted Lucas' request and nodded, he started to look delighted with a smile I had never seen him wear. My name is Jessica Thompson. I'm 38 years old and work at a design firm. I don't really have any worries in my job or personal life and live each day happily. That's what I thought, but sometimes I'm struck by a certain thought. I occasionally wonder when I'll be able to get married. Here I am, almost 40, and not only am I not married, I don't even have a boyfriend. My experiences with romance are also few. Before I knew it, all my friends had tied the knot, and I felt like the odd one out, left behind on my own. There were times I thought maybe I should just give up on the idea of marriage, but seeing how happy my friends seemed made me dream of it, too. The day that turned my life around was just an ordinary evening after work. I was feeling good and decided to grab a drink by myself at a bar. I walked into one that caught my eye and ordered some drinks and appetizers. As I waited and was looking at my phone, I noticed a guy coming over to me.
Hey there, are you on your own?
The man who came up and peered into my face, this was the moment I met Lucas, who would later become my husband.
Yes, I'm by myself. Really? Then let's have a drink together. How about it?
Lucas didn't wait for my reply, he just sat down and started tilting his glass.
Hey. Come on, it'll be fun. Just for a little while.
I figured a little while couldn't hurt, so I let Lucas join me. But I really wasn't in the mood to talk to anyone that day. When I looked down, Lucas started talking on his own. Eventually, I got swept up in the conversation, and we exchanged numbers before parting ways. I thought that would be the end of our interaction, but 2 months after our first meeting, Lucas and I began seeing each other often. During our exchanges, I found myself gradually drawn to Lucas. Talking to him, my feelings would gradually become serene. I honestly wanted to talk more. When he said he wanted to see me, I felt genuinely happy. I never expected to develop such emotions, and I can't help but be surprised. 6 months after we first met, Lucas and I became a couple. 3 years of dating later, we got married. I never imagined I could get married, and when Lucas proposed, it felt like a dream. But I realized after it all ended that this was the pinnacle of happiness. After marriage, Lucas changed drastically. He became so different it made me wonder if his personality during our dating period was just a facade. It was probably about a month after we started living together. Suddenly, Lucas became distant. Whether he would be late coming home, or what he wanted for dinner. I tried to start various conversations, but all I got from Lucas were indifferent responses like, yeah,
Hey, what's been going on with you lately? You seem down. Just leave me alone. It's none of your business, okay?
I wonder if he's come to dislike me. Watching Lucas' attitude worsen day by day, my anxiety grew. Yet, I was still happy that he came home. He would still eat the dinner I made, and we still shared a bedroom. Somewhere in my mind, I believed he still had feelings for me. His current indifference and harsh demeanor could just be because he's tired. I had those feelings. However, a month into our misaligned lives, Lucas started coming home late more often, citing overtime and drinks out, and I found myself spending many nights alone at home. During the day, I'm not alone because of work, but coming home to an empty house is indescribably empty. Just me again tonight. Then a message from Lucas popped up. It was him saying he had to work late again tonight. I appreciate that he still sends messages, but I can't help but worry about the increase in overtime and nights out since we got married. Maybe I did something wrong. Could it be that he's disillusioned and deliberately not coming home? I received a message from Lucas and placed my shopping bags down gently. Before I knew it, Lucas had stopped coming home every day. The slightly pricier rental we got for our new life together. Since Lucas stopped coming home, it has become a place where I spend time alone in loneliness. We were supposed to be married, so why has it come to this? As I thought about Lucas, I continued to eat my dinner alone. When Lucas did occasionally come home, he was always in a bad mood.
You'll eat dinner, right? I'm going to make it now.
As usual, I prepared dinner and served it to Lucas. But after one bite of the side dish, he stopped eating.
What's wrong? Not hungry? I've been meaning to say this, but the food you make is really awful.
I was frozen by his words, something I had never heard before. Until now, he had always said my cooking was delicious and had seconds. There were even times on our anniversaries when he said he preferred my home cooking over going to a fancy restaurant or inn.
And yet, why suddenly?
I'm sorry. I didn't know it was bad. I'll take it away.
Don't touch me!
Lucas glared at me sharply and started eating again. But he never looked pleased with the taste, always frowning. He started to complain about the cleaning and laundry I did as well. if the coffee cups weren't aligned perfectly or if a picture on the wall was tilted. Even a single hair on the floor would result in a complaint. Considering I work too, a few oversights should be understandable. I even began to wonder if it's normal for someone to fuss over such small details. Of course, I've repeatedly mentioned that I can't manage housework perfectly because of my job. However, Lucas was utterly uncompromising. It always ended with him yelling, "You just need to be quiet and do what I say." The stress just kept building up every time I interacted with Lucas. I felt such self-loathing, wondering if I really should have married him. All these swirling emotions even led me to consider divorce. But the fact that I managed to get married at this age, and the hassle of divorce proceedings, made it hard to take any action. I thought I just had to endure. Eventually, I found myself resigned to this way of thinking. But before we got married, I made a big purchase. It was a luxury car from a well-known brand. Of course, I couldn't pay for it all at once, so I'm on a loan. I'm not particularly into cars, but there was one model I've always dreamed of. Now as an adult, owning it makes me happy and motivates me at work. It's thanks to that I'm able to work hard. I drive it to the company, and it's a conversation starter with my car enthusiast colleagues. In the beginning, Lucas complimented the car.
"Wow, that's amazing. Good on you for getting it," he'd say.
But around the time his attitude began to change, he started taking my car without asking. I use my car for commuting and shopping, so it's a problem when it's taken without asking. I might have been more forgiving if Lucas didn't have a car of his own, but he does. Despite that, I dislike that my car is being used without my permission just because he prefers it. Because of this, I have to go out of my way to use the train for commuting, and I have to walk when I go shopping. Of course, I've talked to Lucas about this.
"Hey, can you stop using my car without asking? I need it, too." "What's the big deal?" "It is a big deal for me. I don't care about your issues. You're managing to get to work by train, right? So, it's fine. I have reasons I need to use the car. Don't butt in. Even though you have your own car? Your car is better. Just let it be."
Lucas never listened to me in the end, always cutting off the conversation. The train fares add up, and it's tough to walk from the station to home with a tired body after work. Shopping, which I used to manage once a week, has become more frequent since I can't carry heavy bags without the car, now every other day. I even thought about borrowing Lucas's car. I once asked, with little hope, if I could use it, but he said, "That car is mine. There's no way you can handle it. Don't joke too much, okay?" I thought to myself that one person doesn't need two cars, but I held back my words to avoid another outburst from him. Yet, that doesn't mean I can just use it as I please. Knowing his temperament, he would be furious if the car was parked even slightly off or if the seat and steering wheel were adjusted. That would be a hassle in its own right. If I were younger, I might have argued, but now, I just don't have the energy for it. Lucas continued his pattern of not coming home. He apparently doesn't drink because he drives, but I've noticed him coming home covered in unfamiliar perfume scents. Indeed, his behavior might suggest he's having an affair. I didn't start thinking this just recently, it's been a suspicion for months. I had a faint suspicion ever since Lucas's overtime and nights out began to increase. However, I had no concrete evidence, nor the funds to hire a private investigator. So, I turned a blind eye to Lucas's possible infidelity. Given his condescending attitude toward me, he probably doesn't think I'm aware of his cheating. He must think I'm naive and that I'll just comply with whatever he does, believing he can do anything he wants. The married life I had imagined was far different from this. I dreamed of a warm, kind relationship where we cared for each other, enjoying outings to tourist spots on weekends. I thought I could have that with Lucas, but it was impossible. I'll probably be stuck in this situation for life. With a sigh, I started to make dinner for one. But then one day, something happened that changed everything. It was on a day when I had to work late. I usually inform Lucas when I'm working overtime. I did so that day too, but finished earlier than expected and headed home. No reply from him, as usual. He probably wasn't coming home again today. As I trudged toward my house, I noticed something different. My car was there. Normally, my car would be taken by Lucas, leaving only his car parked alone. It was rare to see mine there. With that thought in mind, I was about to enter the house. But then I saw it. The car was slightly shaking. Perhaps I should have just gone inside the house, but curiosity got the better of me, and I approached the car. I could hear voices from inside. Lucas's voice and a woman's. I edged closer to the car to make sure I could hear the conversation.
Do you love me, Claire? Yes, I do.
The woman's name seemed to be Claire. As I listened, I heard the kind of conversation I had suspected but wished not to hear.
I really want to get a divorce already. I want to marry you, Claire. I'm so happy. How have things been with your wife lately? We don't talk at all. I don't want to. I keep thinking, why did I even marry her? I'm always with you, Claire, so there's no way we could have a proper conversation, right? That makes sense.
I realized I was being mocked. A sharp pain in my chest and an indescribable feeling overcame me. I didn't want to hear any more. I quietly stood up to go inside the house. But at that moment, my bag accidentally hit the car. I knew it was bad, but it was too late. Lucas poked his head out from the driver's seat and looked right at me.
Hey! You! Why are you here? Did your wife hear that? Oh, this is the worst.
Lucas got out of the car and started to confront me.
You said you were working late today, right? Why are you back this early? When you say overtime, it's usually much later, isn't it? Did you lie to me? I didn't lie. It really was overtime. But that aside, when I tell you I'm working late, is this what you usually do?
I thought Lucas would falter at my accusation, but having been seen with Claire, it seemed he had nothing left to lose.
Yeah. So what if I am? Is there a problem? Problem? We're married. What you're doing is cheating. And using my car to drive another woman around. So what if I am? I'm driving it now.
Lucas showed no remorse. And then, he said something unbelievable.
This car is mine and Claire's from now on.
I was so dumbfounded, I couldn't respond. My words, even though it's my car, must have prompted his audacious claim. But at that moment, something in me collapsed. If you're willing to take the car, I'm more than happy to hand it over. Of course, the loan comes with it.
All right, but are you sure about the $6,000 loan?
Yes, I have a $6,000 monthly car loan. It was a bit of a stretch, but I figured I could manage it with my current income. It's ridiculous for me to pay for a car loan that Lucas is using.
But you'll have to pay the loan too. What? Why should I? You keep paying it. Why don't you want to pay? Can't you? With your own car and rent, you might not be able to afford it, can you?
My taunting seemed to enrage Lucas even more.
What do you mean I can't pay it? Fine, I'll pay it.
He must be assuming it's an amount I can afford. Later on, I transferred the loan and ownership of the car to Lucas. When the paperwork was being done, he didn't seem shocked at all by the details of the loan. Whether Lucas could actually pay the $6,000 or hadn't read the documents properly. He appeared to be solely focused on finishing the procedures quickly, eager to get them over with. After the transfer was complete, I moved on to the divorce proceedings. This time, due to the infidelity, I hired a lawyer and went for a settlement divorce. I submitted the dashcam footage from the day I discovered the affair to the lawyer and filed for divorce and alimony. The lawyer happily took on my case, and after weeks of preparation, the day to confront Lucas finally arrived. Lucas was visibly angry, and Claire sat beside him with a defiant look. I was told numerous times that hiring a lawyer was excessive, but I didn't think so at all. As we proceeded, I found out how Lucas and Claire met and who she really was. Apparently, Claire is the daughter of an executive at the company where Lucas works. Claire also worked in the same company and department as Lucas, and they were acquainted. Of course, Lucas knew she was the executive's daughter when he pursued her. Lucas was in the wrong for initiating, but Claire was also to blame for engaging with him, knowing he was married. I demanded a divorce and alimony from Lucas, and alimony from Claire. Lucas, perhaps out of stubbornness, exclaimed, "Alimony. Divorce. Do whatever you like. I'll pay whatever alimony you want." However, Claire was adamant about not wanting to pay anything.
"Why should I pay? It was Lucas who approached me first." "But you knew he was married and still entered into a relationship with Lucas, right? Then you have to pay." "Absolutely not. Are you okay with your parents and company finding out about this? I can send a letter of demand, you know." "What? A letter of demand? Do whatever you want."
Claire might think I'm bluffing. Well, if she says to do whatever I want, I will take her at her word. I'll send the letter without hesitation. Since Lucas and I both wanted a divorce, it was finalized that day. Lucas agreed to pay alimony, so we proceeded with the dissolution. Of course, as I had declared, I later sent a letter of demand to Claire's company. As expected, she hadn't thought I would really send it, and I was informed by the lawyer that Claire had agreed to pay alimony too. After the divorce, I moved to a house near my company and continued to live a comfortable life. No need to consider anyone else. No need to think about the car loan. What a wonderful life this is. If I hadn't gotten married, could I have continued living like this? I sometimes wonder that and honestly feel a twinge of regret. Maybe because I can afford a more comfortable lifestyle, my colleagues have been telling me I look healthier. I've decided to live quietly on my alimony and my own earnings. I'm not getting married again. From now on, I'll live life for myself. That was my resolution. But about 3 months after the divorce, Lucas unexpectedly called me. What could he possibly want now? Reluctantly, I answered the phone.
"Hello? It's not hello. What's going on? What's this red envelope about?"
A red envelope? Perhaps a payment reminder?
"Calm down. What do you want? What's this red envelope about?" "When I opened it, it says to pay for the car loan." "Wait, you were paying $6,000 a month. I didn't know about this." "You didn't know? I presented the amount when we transferred the loan and ownership. It's strange you didn't know." "What? You thought you didn't have to check the amount because I was paying it? No way, I thought it'd be $6,000. Hey! Can't we change it back so you'll pay now?"
He really is a man of convenience. After all, Lucas would be the one driving even if I paid. Besides, now that we're divorced, I shouldn't have to listen to Lucas.
"It's not possible. Remember, you were the one who started saying the car was yours in the first place. Do you really think it's fair to ask me to pay for it now? Don't say that. Weren't we married? Even though we're divorced, we were in love, right? Can't you help me out when I'm in trouble?"
In love? Help him out when he's in trouble? What is he talking about? I understand that we were in love because we were married. But I've been through a lot because of Lucas. And now he expects help just because he's in trouble? That's too convenient.
You know, it's far too convenient for you to live as you please and then come to me, a complete stranger since we're divorced, for help when you're in trouble. Now that a demand notice has arrived, you'd better figure out how to come up with the money and make the payment quickly. Figure out how? That's impossible. Don't start with that now. Even if it was in the heat of the moment, you were the one who said you'd pay for my car's loan, remember? Maybe it's time you learn to take responsibility for your own words. So that's that. Hey!
Lucas was causing a fuss on the other end of the phone, but I had nothing left to say to him. Without a second thought about his concerns, I just hung up. Afterwards, the phone rang about 10 times, but there was no way I was going to answer. I left my smartphone aside, and eventually, the ringing stopped and there were no more calls after that. Half a year later, I was still living comfortably on my own. Moving closer to my workplace made commuting blissfully easy. Having more personal time and finding a new hobby of going to art galleries added to my happiness. Then, on a leisurely day off, as I relaxed on the sofa, my phone rang. Looking at the caller ID, I saw Lucas's name. Why was he calling again? Hesitantly, I answered the phone to hear him start speaking in a tone that belied his previous bravado. Jessica. It's me. Lucas.
What's wrong?
It may seem like he's in a weakened state, but I can't afford to indulge him. I inquired about the matter with a tone that kept him at a distance. Alimony. I just can't pay it anymore. Please, give me a break.
Excuse me? Give you a break?
His choice of words irked me, but I was curious to hear what had happened. Apparently, he had been putting on a front, but after our divorce, he had to leave his job. The reason was an affair with Claire, a board member's daughter. It appears he was encouraged to resign voluntarily for disrupting the company's order. And now, Claire had dumped him too. He struggled to find a new job, barely getting by with temp work and part-time gigs. However, that kind of life did not last long. Now it seems he has sold both cars, moved out of the rental, and returned to his parents' home. With this, life should become a bit easier for him. But a few weeks after returning home, his mother's health deteriorated, and she needed care. Due to his father's old age, it seems that Shudo has no choice but to take care of his mother while also being chased by the demands of his job. And just because he sold the cars, it didn't mean he was free from car payments. The luxury car loan and the alimony to me. Lucas himself seemed quite overwhelmed.
Please, I'm begging you. Look, if it'll help, I'm even willing to get back together, all right? Wouldn't that make things easier for you too? What do you say? Where would I possibly find ease in that?
Without much thought, it was clear that getting back with Lucas now would mean taking on the burden of his parents' care, the car loan payments, and other living expenses. He'd likely quit his job and leave all the household responsibilities to me. You just want to dump all the housework on me and quit your job, I suppose. Living together was tough enough as it was. No one would willingly jump into an even more difficult situation.
I've said something like this before, but you really only think about yourself, don't you? You're probably thinking of reconciling with me, moving back into the house, and having fun yourself, right? It's not like that. Even if you say it's not like that, I can't believe you. Do you have any idea how much hardship you've caused me? Taking care of your parents might be tough, but getting forced out of your job? Being dumped by your girlfriend? All of that wouldn't have happened if you hadn't cheated, right?
Lucas fell silent. However, I kept pressing him further. I really wonder why I ever married someone like you. If I could meet my younger self, I'd be furious. I'd tell her, no matter what, do not marry Lucas, it won't make you happy. And the fact that you're still talking about getting back together now, it's kind of crazy. If you were really sorry, you wouldn't say things like that. So, just so you know, you'll be paying that alimony on time.
Please, I'm begging you. It must be humiliating to beg someone you once looked down upon, isn't it? No matter how much you plead, I will not listen to your requests. So, do not contact me ever again. Hey! Jessica!
I hung up the phone right after that. Following this, Lucas seemed to have given up, as he stopped contacting me altogether. No more calls, no emails. His desperation was clear in that last call, but the condescension in his tone made me think he still doesn't see his own faults, wondering why such misfortune has befallen him. Well, the alimony has continued to be deposited, so I guess he's managing somehow. Half a year after Lucas's last attempt to reach out, I continue to live my life comfortably on my own. I've continued with my newly found hobby of visiting art museums. As a result, my room is overflowing with art books and postcards purchased from the gift shops. Lately, I've been wanting to visit art museums abroad. There's a lot I think about when it comes to married life, and honestly, even if I were reborn, I doubt I'd want to get married. There's not a single thing about marriage that I think is good. Right now, I'm just grateful for this environment where I can comfortably live on my own.